stop calling? I'm not used to hearing the sound of silence. Your lips have been silent. When did you get filled with doubt? Don't go thinking love is lost. We don't have to watch it fall. We can put back together our hearts, yeah.
Biblical DNA here. Today's video we have demographic history, genetic variation of Armenian population. This article was published in November, and when I was in school, I didn't have time to discuss it, right? So this is what I want to do today, y'all. All right, we got the demographic history of the Armenians, origins and early development. Armenians primarily originate from the Armenian highlands, a key region for human migrations, cultural development since the Upper Paleolithic. Early genetic influences stem from Neolithic farmers in Anatolia and Levantine hunter-gatherers. The Armenian highlands served as a crossroad for genetic and cultural exchanges between Anatolia, the Levant, Caucasus, and the Iranian plateau. Armenian highlands served as a crossroad for genetic cultural exchanges. Anatolia, Levant, Caucasus, the Armenian plateau. Okay. Bronze Age development. Introduction of Yamnaya-related ancestry 4,000 years ago. During the early Bronze Age, emergence of Araxes in subsequent cultures, marking regional genetic and cultural continuity. Genetic patterns align with the rise of the Proto-Armenian language in the second half of the Bronze Age. Admixture analysis. Late Bronze Age Armenians received genetic input from Levantine and Anatolian populations. Evidence of gene flow from the Chalcolithic and Bronze Age populations, Greece, the Balkans, but no significant genetic connection to modern-day Balkan population. All right, this is the code that I put for the admixture for the late Bronze Age Armenians, Latins. So we're showing admixture down here, but it's roughly about, I think it's 25% Levantine, like 40, give me 1 sec, got it down. Okay, there we go. So it's about 16% Levantine, 28% Anatolian, 21% Mesopotamian, 33% Yemeniya. All right, genetic variation and admixture in Armenians population homogeneity. Armenians show significant genetic homogeneity despite geographic and cultural divides between Western and Central and Eastern regions. Susan Armenians, a subpopulation, exhibit distinct genetic traits due to a recent bottleneck. Iron Age admixture. Bratins, Iron Age Armenians exhibit genetic continuity with earlier late Bronze Age populations, with additional input from the Levant and Mesopotamia. Some Levantine ancestry in Western and Central Highland populations consistent with trade connections during this period. Late Bronze Age and Iron Age Bratins, Late Bronze Age Armenians received genetic input from Levantine and Anatolian populations. Evidence of gene flow from Chalcolithic and Bronze Age populations, Greece and the Balkans, but no significant genetic connection to the modern Balkan population. continuity and the genetic structure, genetic continuity between late Bronze Age populations in Eastern Armenia and Iron Age Urartians. Distinct patterns of gene flow highlight Urartu's connections to neighboring regions like Mesopotamia. Cultural and genetic integration. Urartians incorporated genetic influences from trade networks extending to the Aegean, Anatolia, and Levant. Eastern highland populations remain genetically stable, maintaining a continuity with Neolithic and Bronze Age ancestors. This was the admixture proportions for Urartians. Got the admixture proportions for late Bronze Age and Iron Age Urartians. As you can see, they look genetically similar, but there's definitely a decrease in the Iron Age when it comes to Levantine DNA, Anatolian, Mesopotamian, more of an increase of Yamnaya and Araxes. So Iron Age and later, genetic continuity observed with Urartians, the Iron Age predecessors of Armenians, confirming close links between modern and ancient inhabitants of the region. External gene flow from Anatolia, the Levant, and Mesopotamia is evident, reflecting trade and migration. Correlation matrix of admixture proportions for Urartians and nearby populations that I created. We have the Levantine, Anatolian, Mesopotamian, Yamnaya, Araxes. The Levantine is it should be Neolithic, and the Anatolian should be Neolithic also, the farmers. All right, so the key markers, the Y-DNA haplogroup include R1b linked to the Yamnaya, J2A, and J1A, Middle Eastern origins. mtDNA haplogroups like H, J, and U dominate, reflecting continuity with ancient populations in the region. All right, and this is the Y-DNA haplogroup for the Urartians, late Bronze Age and Iron Age. The key points: Armenians demonstrate deep genetic continuity with the ancient populations of the Armenian highlands. Periodic admixture events from neighboring regions enrich the genetic makeup without disturbing regional homogeneity. The Urartians serve as a genetic and cultural bridge between Bronze Age Armenians and their modern descendants. So I've pretty much brought all three together so you can see similarities between the three. So from the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and the modern day Armenians themselves. So they really kept that genetic continuity, as you can tell from the Iron Age writing. There was some important highlights that I did in this article. We have the earliest reference to Armenia as a state is found in the Babylonian version of the Bestrum inscription dating back to 522. At the start of the reign of Darius I Great, the Old Persian version of the same inscription, the region was referred to as Urartu. Iron Age kingdom that flourished in the Armenian highlands for approximately 3 centuries, characterized by significant genetic heterogeneity. Subsequent periods in the region have been marked by a series of invasions and mass migrations of the local population, which impacted various parts of the highlands differently. These included portions by the Assyrian, Persian, Byzantine empires, Arabs, Seljuk, Turks, Mongols, the Ottoman Empire. Although in the past the Armenians populations populated the regions reaching as far as the Mediterranean coast, they now primarily reside in the eastern part of the Armenian highlands, nestled in the southern Caucasus, where present-day Armenia is. This complex historical background of the highlands makes a study of the geographic or demographic history of the Armenians a major or matter of importance to shed light on settling and the regional migrations. At the same time, the mountainous landscape, distinct and very old Armenian language, and a strong national and cultural identity, reinforced later by the adoption of Christianity, might have been conducive for the long-term genetic isolation of Armenians from the neighboring populations. Indeed, a comparison of both ancient and modern mitochondrial genomes (mtDNA) across a time span of 8,000 years revealed a remarkably high level of matrilineal genetic continuity in the region. The picture of genetic isolation is further backed by genome-wide autosomal studies of contemporary Armenians, suggesting a lack of an external genetic influence, at least since the Bronze Age. Nevertheless, contemporary genomes have limited power to draw inferences of the genetic continuity through time, and a detailed study of the demographic and population histories of Armenians with the inclusion of both ancient and modern genomes has not yet been undertaken. I won't read the rest of this, but if you have time to interesting read, with the new paper or the new research that I did in my previous video, it also links the connection between, if there was a connection between the Armenians and Greeks, the language, and that was refuted. This was, it mentions the Vulcan theory based on the ancient Greek historian Herodotus writings, the ancestors of the Armenians, with Pelargian colonists who migrated to the Armenian highlands from the Balkans. Yeah, that basically that was like. So I can go back to the. And there's a CA right there with the. Y'all can see that. Zoom that in. A good look at that. There, Palestinians and Lebanese. I see the Palestinian purple. See the Jordanians. The Druze right on top of them. Anatolia. It's interesting how they're basically clustering with the Lebanese Muslims, while the Lebanese Christians are with the Syrians, the Susan. the Saudis are like outside of clustering with the Palestinians, but not obviously not close. Like most would claim they would be. They came from Saudi Arabia. Obviously, there's a distinction. Because our results showed that the Susan formed a clade with other Armenian populations that is not broken by Assyrians. Based on these analyses, we conclude that all modern Armenians are relatively homogeneous while sharing high similarity to neighboring populations, and there is no evidence for the Susan harboring an unusually high contribution from Assyrians. I had all of this highlighted too. We observe that the modern Armenians cluster falls in between genetic variation of the modern Caucasus and the Middle East, which is in coordinates with their geographic location. Most people don't want to accept that. They want to be related to these people, and it's like, no, you're not neighboring to these people. How are you related to them? These people were doing migrations and whatnot. Distribution of mitochondrial and Y chromosome haplogroups. The analysis of the spectrum of Y chromosome in the mtDNA haplogroup Armenians showed a prevalence of region-specific lineages. In particular, the most common Y chromosome haplogroups are R1b, 23%, J2A, 26%, J1A, 16%. That's why I messed up on my code. I was trying to get it right where it showed R1b. I'll figure it out. I'm still working on this stuff, so I'm learning as much as possible. In our data set, all Armenians with haplogroup R1b belong to its Yamnaya associated R-Z2103 lineage. Interestingly, its greatest genetic diversity has been observed in the Armenian highlands. The haplogroups J2A, J1A are considered Middle Eastern by their origin, but also have deep roots in the Caucasus as they were found in Paleolithic samples from Georgia. The matrilineal gene pool of Armenians is mostly represented by the haplogroups H 28%, J 17%, U 14%, and N 11%. The modern mtDNA haplogroup composition was typical for ancient individuals from the Armenian highlands, except for the latter lineage that had no occurrence in the samples from Neolithic to medieval times. This is the Ratu sample up here, clustering in with the Eastern Armenia, Western Armenia, early Bronze Age, Chalcolithic. Additionally, this K=7 results suggest elevated ancient Levantine-like ancestry in both Western and the central ancient Armenian highlands populations. This contrasts with the Eastern ancient highland groups and aligns with RPCA results. And if I'm not mistaken, the whole point is that they basically have an ancient Levantine admixture. It's not from like the Bronze or Middle Bronze or Iron Age. It's actually from ancient Levantine, the Neolithic, um, Chalcolithic, the Natufian culture. They have this ancient Levantine admixture amongst. We then conducted a pairwise comparison among ancient Armenian highland populations. Effort revealed the timing of the Neolithic Levantine farmers-like genetic influx. Apart from the latter, we identified the impact of gene flow associated with the steppe as a contributing factor to genetic heterogeneity within Eastern Armenian highland population at the time. Consistent with a previous study, the test revealed the previously mentioned gene flow in the region, followed by a gradual reduction of steppe ancestry after the Iron Age. I had Yeah, this is what it's talking about right here. That's it right there. What aligns with the findings of the prior study, which the pottery Neolithic font ancestry in Armenia following. So it's following the late. We found a signal of a gene flow into modern Armenians from the Sardinian and Eastern-like sources after the Late Bronze Iron Age, though it should be noted that our sample size, Middle Bronze Age samples, is limited. It is worth noting that while all Armenian groups show a similar tendency, the Central Armenian group had the highest contribution to this signal, which may be due to the relatively larger sample size of this population. The Assyrians also disrupted the clade between the late Bronze Iron Age populations from the eastern parts of the highlands, modern Eastern and Central Armenians, while showing a similar tendency for Susan and Western Armenians. This confirms our previous conclusions on the lack of any additional Assyrian ancestry in time and supports the suggestion that the result of the previous D-statistic test with modern Greeks indicates a genetic influx into modern Armenians, which is shared with modern Greeks. Altogether, our results suggest a gene flow from a Neolithic Levantine farmers-like source into the eastern parts of the Armenian highlands, presumably during after the end of the Bronze Age, which differentiated modern Armenians from their regional ancestors. This result aligns with the findings from a prior study which demonstrated an increase in pre-pottery Neolithic Levant ancestry in Armenia following the late Bronze Age, 3,200 years ago. That one up here. We then use dates, which allows one to date admixture events by incorporation of ancient DNA. The analysis shows that Iron Age Lebanon and late Bronze Age Armenian highlands samples were admixed 55 generations, standard error values ranging from 57.3 to 35.95, roughly corresponds to the onset of the late Bronze Age and Finally, we use QP Atom in an attempt to model modern Armenians with genetic contributions from the Iron Age Levant and late Bronze Age Armenian highland populations. However, this analysis was highly inconsistent and unstable. While changing the sample size in the populations or adding more populations in the reference group, despite QP Wave showing their good representation. As such, we obtain a result of zero point 0.6 and zero point 0.4 for genetic contribution from the population of the Iron Age Levant and Late Bronze Age Armenian highlands, respectively. When considering between 3 and 4 standard deviations, standard error is equal to 0.04. These proportions align with previously mentioned. That's all I wanted to read. Yeah, this one was highlighted too. The Late Bronze Age, on the other hand, was characterized by intense cultural interactions with neighboring populations, Assyrians, Hittites, and Mesopotamians. That was saw these diverse cultures come together and starting to move around, migration, which causes other populations to move too. Again, read the wrong one. Yeah. In our study, we noticed a decline for the genetic or Neolithic Levantine farmers like genetic influx within Armenian geographic groups. The most isolated population were Eastern Armenians, 28% of Iron Age Lebanon related genetic input inferred by Graph, which agrees with their geography and thus shows the effect of mountains as barriers to genetic exchange. At the same time, we acknowledge that for ancestry modeling and calculations of the genetic contribution, it was not feasible to avoid mixing different sequencing technologies, which could potentially impact the results. As a note of caution, it is important to consider that in these statistics, modern or ancient affinities may result not only from course mortem damage, but also from reference bias, which cannot be eliminated solely by using versions. This is why we employ additional methods in our study, drawing conclusions from all of them. And that's supplement something. Ain't gonna say anything. Y'all can just figure out what I just did on your own. You can leave it in the comment section if you figure out what I just did. How all the Middle Eastern Levantine population cluster together. It's interesting that the Bulgarian opposed to clustering. And so this is the previous paper, the ancient genomics or deep between Western Mediterranean. There was something about Armenians in this article. Contrast, Armenian and Greek populations acquired steppe ancestors directly from Yamnaya groups Eastern Europe. That's the Brachio-Armenian. Another one, so-called Indo-Greek hypothesis groups Greek as well as the closely related Phrygian. I always forget how to say their names. It's Phrygian, something like that, with Indo-Iranian, while competing Greco-Armenian hypothesis says that um, Greek forms a subclade with Armenian, possibly also including Albanian, Balkan, Indo-Europe. There's something else I wonder. It might be in the supplement. Oh, I had it highlighted. Oh, four axes. Right here. There we go. Like I knew this is in somewhere. All right, the Caucasus in eastern Anatolia, Armenian. The Armenian language attested from 1550 or present, historically spoken in the South Caucasus and eastern Anatolia. Linguistic supplementary 4.3, its earliest presence there has previously been estimated to date to around 3100 before present. During the late Iron Age, most of the region was part of the Ratian Kingdom. Important. Anybody that's ever heard me speak knows why the Ratian Kingdom is important to the Bible. This state was culturally diverse and likely also contained an Armenian linguistic element as evident as evidenced by the exchange of vocabulary between Ratian and an early form of Armenian. This is potentially supported by the presence of steppe ancestry among the published individuals from Urartian and pre-Urartian contexts. Steppe ancestry has previously been detected in South Caucasus from the Middle Bronze Age, coinciding with the transition from the Araxes culture to the Trialeti culture by the end of the 5th millennium before present. We can now demonstrate that these individuals, as well as those from Urartian contexts, received steppe ancestry, the same Western Yamnaya population as 4th millennium BP individuals from the Aegean. These findings support the linguistic Greco-Romanian hypothesis and suggest that the linguistic precursor of Armenian was introduced to the Caucasus by the end of the 5th millennium BP. That was it. But I feel like there's something else here too that I wanted to touch upon. before I end this video. Perfect. Jumps right to it. Oh, I have it highlighted. Whereas the early Bronze Age individuals from Moldova cluster with Yamnaya, two of the newly sequenced Moldovan individuals from Balabanu and Trasilia also belong to subcluster 0_4_3_2. Another subcluster is 0433, and steppe Neolithic individuals from Piedmont and individuals from Ukraine, Greece, and Bulgaria dated to 4000 BC. After this time, Armenian Middle Late Bronze Age individuals and one Urartian individuals are found within the same cluster. There you go. There we go. Oh, this is ridiculous when you go to all these articles highlighting stuff. So much stuff like you can't come to them. Oh, he also detected a mix of Naya and Piedmont published Urartian and reported Iron Age Alahoka individual CGG 202293 suggesting other steppe. That's it. All right, y'all. If y'all enjoyed the video, gain some knowledge, video and material, especially sad mixture like this, to understand the saying. That's something that I hope that's giving people of an idea exactly, a breakdown, ad mixture, coding to be able to And like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it so much, and thank you that are following me content. Part this video. Out.